The Cursed Emma. This is the story of a girl in Shimane, Japan, in the summer of 1993. In a small country town, there was an old shrine. The shrine used to be visited by many people who wrote their wishes on Emma, votive picture horses, but now hardly anyone visits the shrine anymore. The only sound in the empty shrine is the sound of countless Emma fluttering in the wind. There is an old rumor that there is a special Emma at this shrine. During the record-breaking heat of August, Minoko, a young woman living in the town, hears about this rumor from a friend and, out of curiosity, decides to visit the shrine with her friend. When Minoko arrived at the shrine, she found an Emma hake, votive tablet, lined with countless old Emma, votive picture tablet. There were Emma with various wishes written on them, but there was one Emma that stood out from the rest, drawn in dark black ink. Minoko was intrigued by the Emma and picked it up to look at it, whereupon she saw that the words instead of the wish being granted, "The cursed person's life will be taken," were written on it. Minoko felt eerie, but out of curiosity decided to write her wish on the Emma. She wrote her wish on the Emma, that her family would be happy. That night, Minoko was having dinner with her family at home when she suddenly felt a severe headache and collapsed. She did not know what had happened and asked her family for help, but they showed no reaction to her. On the contrary, the family acted as if she did not exist. Help! Minoko's desperate cries did not seem to reach her family. The next morning, Minoko felt she had to go somewhere far away as she watched the whole family happily talk to her, ignoring her. She left the house and headed back to the shrine where the Emma was hanging. There she realized that she was cursed, as the Emma said. Minoko regretted wishing for her family's happiness in exchange for her life, and attempted to break the Emma to break the curse. However, no matter how hard she tried, the Emma would not break. Minoko despaired and broke down in tears in the precincts of the shrine. At that moment, Minoko felt an eerie laughter coming from far away. She looked around in horror, but no one was there. The laughter did not leave her ears as she left the shrine. Soon Minoko became aware of the sensation that her life was slowly being drained away, and she was tormented by sadness and despair, unable to accept the reality of the situation. Minoko began to notice a strange phenomenon: her body was gradually disappearing. And around her, the spirits of people who had been victims of Emma's curse in the past began to appear. They kept laughing as they whispered to Minoko. Minoko's despair grew as she realized that their spirits had been bound forever by the wishes she had written on the Emma. The thought that she, like them, will be doomed to be bound to this world after death, fills her with dread. Gradually, Minoko's vision darkens and she no longer knows where she is. As she loses sight of her surroundings, she hears the screams and cries of those who have been victimized by the Emma curse. She felt she could not bear it any longer and called for help, but no one recognized her voice. Minoko felt her life coming to an end as she was tormented by fear and despair. As she was engulfed by the darkness around her, she used the last of her strength to call out to Emma for help, but nothing changed. She attempted to resist to the end, but gradually ran out of strength. Her body gradually became transparent and finally she disappeared completely. At that moment, the spirits around her also disappeared and the area was once again enveloped in silence. After Minoko disappeared, no one knew of her fate. The shrine was then visited by yet another victim, and the curse of the Emma took people's lives one after another. This terrible legend would continue to be whispered in the darkness of the town. As time passed, Minoko's family forgot all about her. New Emma, votive picture tablet, hangings were hung at the shrine, and people came endlessly to write their wishes. However, they were unaware of Minoko's fate and unaware of the possibility of being caught up in the curse of the Emma. One night, a young woman visits the shrine. She, too, wrote her wish on an Emma, wishing for the happiness of her family. However, when she goes to hang the Emma, she suddenly notices something strange. Behind the Emma, there was an old Emma secretly hidden, with wishes written by people in the same situation as Minoko. As the woman stares at the Emma, she is driven by a terrible premonition. She then realizes that she is caught up in the curse of the Emma and stands in the depths of despair. The sight of her suffering the same fate as Minoko arouses further fears in the darkness of the town. The curse of the Emma has claimed one victim after another and will forever be talked about as a terrifying entity that creeps into people's hearts and minds. The time when red spider lilies wilt. A house at dusk, with the sound of the still new curtains swaying in the wind. This is the house in the countryside where 27-year-old Yoichi has newly moved to escape the hustle and bustle of the city. In 1997, in late September, when the summer heat still lingers a little, the country roads are covered with bright red spider lilies. Yoichi had moved to Tokyo after graduating from university, but he was tired of city life and decided to make a fresh start and start a new life in the countryside. The house he moves into is an old wooden building on the outskirts of town. He was introduced to the house by a real estate agent he stopped by. The house looks 50 years old, but there is something quaint about it, and Yoichi immediately likes it. However, for some reason, the house had a lot of mirrors in every room. At first this didn't bother him, but gradually strange phenomena began to occur. Entering the house, Yoichi looks around the living room. The air is a little damp, and Yoichi holds his nose while he opens the window to ventilate. As Yoichi explores the house, he notices that there are mirrors in the dimly lit corridors and on the walls of the stairs. All the mirrors are surrounded by old frames and have a somehow dark atmosphere. In the bedroom there was a large mirror that reflected the whole body. The frame is red and creepy. As Yoichi stares at his reflection in the mirror, he realizes that the fatigue of the move is showing on his face. Every time he looked in the mirror, he felt that his expression was changing to one of anxiety and fear, but Yoichi, who was actually tired from the moving process, decided to finish the moving process early before the sun set. In the evening, as the sun was setting, Yoichi fell asleep in his bedroom, exhausted. In the middle of the night, Yoichi wakes up to feel something in front of him. In the darkness, he stares at his reflection in his bedroom mirror. Then, he sees himself in the mirror, smiling slowly. Yoichi stiffens in fear. He rubs his eyes and looks in the mirror again, but there is nothing strange. Except that there is a woman right behind Yoichi. Startled, Yoichi covered the mirror with a cloth to hide it, covered his head with a blanket and closed his eyes tightly. The next morning, with the cloth-covered mirror by his side, he recalled last night. He did not dare to remove the cloth. Having just moved in, Yoichi leaves his house to greet his neighbors. The neighbors greet Yoichi warmly, but look uneasy about his house. They are told that the house has long been rumored to be haunted by misfortune. However, nobody knows the specific reason. Yoichi was curious about the identity of the female spirit that appeared in the mirror. He likes the house itself, although he thinks it would be better if he moved out immediately. I thought I would find out the identity and history if I could, and then decide whether or not to move. Start researching about the history of the home and rumors about the area. As he gathered information from the library and the internet, he learned that a certain mirror maker used to live in Yoichi's house. One evening, Yoichi summons up the courage to stand in front of the mirror again, hoping to ask her directly. Behind Yoichi stood a woman, unchanged. Yoichi's body stiffens again in fear. Her expression is hidden by her hair. She has pale, bloodless skin and is standing right behind Yoichi, motionless. He tries to speak to her in the mirror, but there is no response. Around that time, strange events start happening around him one after another. The door to his room opens by itself in the middle of the night and noises are heard. Mysterious footsteps are sometimes heard in the house, and Yoichi is terrified. Even through the curtains at night, he feels as if someone is watching him. He spends sleepless days and is growing tired. These days, he spends his days somewhat absent-minded, as if his feet are not on the ground. Despite his fear, Yoichi tries to uncover the truth about the mirror. He works with a local antiquities dealer to discover the skills and secrets of the mirror craftsman who made the mirror in his home. However, as he gets closer to the truth, Yoichi is in danger. One night, when Yoichi removes the cloth from the mirror, the spirit of a woman is still there. However, she suddenly disappears. Soon after, more powerful and evil spirits begin to appear in Yoichi's house. The door opens by itself, dishes fall from the cupboard and make a loud noise. Yoichi gradually becomes unable to bear the fear and tries to break the mirror. However, the mirror shows no sign of breaking. He calls his family and friends for help, but his phone doesn't work and the front door won't open. Yoichi is isolated. He stayed in his room and pounded on the mirror with his fists. He kept pounding on the mirror every day, thinking that breaking it would break the curse. How much time had passed? A week? A month? Yoichi's hand no longer felt pain. The mirror had turned red. And he could not break the mirror until the end. He had used up all his strength. Yoichi was found in front of the mirror, his face violently distorted by fear. After that, the house became infamous and no one would go near it. The mirror maker's curse has still not been lifted, and it is said that every time a red spider lily blooms, the screams of those who have suffered the same unfortunate fate as Yoichi can be heard. And as the petals of the red spider lily fall, new victims appear. Nightmare. Nami, Keiko and Kumi's screams echo through the hospital as the three desperately run away from it. On a hot and humid night at the end of summer 2018, 18-year-old Nami and her friends decide to go on a liver test to remember their summer holiday. Nami did not agree to go, but she could not refuse her friend's invitation. Their destination is an abandoned hospital that was closed in 1990, which is rumored in the area. The abandoned hospital was rumored to be haunted by the spirits of deceased patients. Nami's two friends were Keiko, who was curious, and Kumi, who had a cheerful disposition. The girls decided to take a torch, a security buzzer and a good luck charm to prepare for the test of courage. As night fell, Nami and her friends met at the station near the abandoned hospital and headed for their destination. The air is heavy and damp and clings to them. On the way, the girls talked about nothing else, easing each other's tension, but gradually their conversation tended to break off. Nami was walking in fear as the sound of her footsteps on the night road overlapped with her own heartbeat. She had decided to take part in the liver test for the sake of her friends, while being strong, but deep down she regretted it. On her way to her destination, she gazed into the darkness around her and felt the eeriness of it all. Finally, the girls arrived at an abandoned hospital. The place was surrounded by old buildings and seemed to float in a desolate forest. The hospital was surrounded by trees engulfed in darkness, making an eerie sound whenever the wind blew. The hospital, faintly lit by moonlight, was so dilapidated that it was hard to imagine that it had once been a vibrant place. Nami couldn't stop shaking as she passed through the hospital gates. Her legs would not move forward. Keiko and Kumi began to walk with their smiles fading and their mouths shut. The corridor through which they proceeded, with paint sometimes peeling from the walls due to age and deterioration, and the ceiling swollen white from humidity, seemed to tell the story of the hospital's past. Inside the abandoned hospital, the air was damp and dimly lit by the moon. Every time Nami and the others' torches illuminate the darkness of the abandoned hospital, a shadow is projected on the wall. Each time the shadows move erratically, the girls' fear grows. Suddenly, an eerie noise echoes down the corridor. Nami hurriedly grabs Keiko and Kumi's hands and stops them, and the three of them slowly turn their torches in the direction of the noise, gasping for breath. Kumi gathers her courage and says, "Maybe it was just my imagination," she murmured to reassure them. Nami and Keiko nodded, but their fear only deepened. As Nami and her friends proceeded to the basement of the abandoned hospital, strange phenomena began to occur. This seems to be a mortuary. The three looked at each other and slowly opened the door, and suddenly a cold wind blew through. In the basement of the hospital, where the wind should never blow, it passed between the three of them and the door at the end of the corridor quietly closed. They hear what sounds like a child crying in the distance, perhaps the sound of the wind. Nami was frightened, but tried to cheer Keiko and Kumi up. "It's okay, it's probably just the wind or something," she said the words. The girls continued to search the hospital, their hands sweating and tense. Then Kumi suddenly stopped and whispered, "Hey, I need to go to the toilet," she whispered. Nami and Keiko, puzzled, searched for a nearby toilet. However, after Kumi went into the toilet, she did not come back. Nami and Keiko became worried and called out into the toilet, but there was no answer. Finally, Keiko gathered her courage and stepped into the toilet. Kumi is not there. The toilet was a mess, as if it had been ransacked cruelly, and only Kumi's amulet had fallen at her feet. Nami was overcome with despair and burst into tears. "I can't do this anymore. Let's go home," Nami mumbled in a shaking voice as she grabbed Keiko's arm and seemed to disappear. Keiko, too, in a trembling voice, said, "No, we can't. I have to find Kumi," she replies. The girls held hands tightly and searched the hospital again for the missing Kumi. When they had walked for a while, they asked, "Where did Kumi go?" She spoke to Keiko, making her voice cheerful. But there was no response. Nami felt a strange feeling in her hand. Nami's right hand, which should have been connected, was firmly gripped by her severed left hand. Panicking, Nami screamed and threw her hand away. She crouched down on the spot and cried loudly. I wondered if I should just go home. But she believed that surely they would both still be in the hospital, and decided to go deeper into the hospital alone. The air was damp and filled with abandoned clinic rooms and wards, where the history of the hospital seemed to be etched in her feet. Only the sound of her footsteps echoed through the hospital. Nami clutched the torch with her own trembling hands and made her way through the darkness. Her fear mingled with the grief of losing her friend and became a piercing pain in her chest. Nami stepped deeper into the operating theater. At that moment, the air changed and a heavy, clinging atmosphere enveloped her. She could feel eyes on her. The operating table was still stained with black stains and old medical instruments were scattered haphazardly. She looks around the room gingerly, trembling with fear but determined to find her friend. Then, she is suddenly hit by a sensation of a grip on her leg. Nami hurriedly turns the torch to her feet. Unable to scream, Nami stares at it, frozen in fear. There, something with a frightening face she had never seen before was gripping her leg. Its face was distorted and it seemed to have no eyes. It gripped Nami's leg tightly and tried to pull her closer. Nami gathered her strength and tried to pull her leg out to escape it. But the force of it was so strong that she could not escape. Nami tears up and mutters an apology to her friend. "I'm sorry." At that moment, Nami's consciousness fades away. She falls into unconsciousness. The next morning, Nami regains consciousness near the entrance to the abandoned hospital. Her mind was confused and her memories were blurred by fear. However, driven by a sense of duty to find her friends, she steps inside the hospital again. The corridor in front of the operating theater in the basement, where no sunlight had reached, had exactly the same bizarre atmosphere as last night. When Nami entered the operating theater again, she found Keiko and Kumi there. When the girls find Nami, they cry tears of relief and hug each other. Relieved, the three of them turn around to go home together and see the same thing that was in the operating theater last night. Slowly but surely it approached the three of them. The three could not escape it. The next morning, Nami regained consciousness near the entrance to the abandoned hospital. Her mind was confused and her memories were blurred by fear. However, she was driven by a sense of duty to find her friends and set foot inside the hospital again. The corridor in front of the operating theater in the basement, where no sunlight reached, had exactly the same bizarre atmosphere as last night. The screams of Nami, Keiko and Kumi echo through the hospital. This is a mental hospital, where the three were to spend the rest of their lives never waking up. Day after day, at the same time for eternity, they scream and become delirious, and the doctor gives them a sedative. Their hands and feet are secured with belts as they flail about. These women's lives come to an end in a dark shadow. The horrific experience leaves them with a lasting scar, and their memories and experiences will not disappear for as long as they live. The hide and seek alone shown in this video is considered a very dangerous seance in Japan. It can be easily recreated with familiar objects, but be careful not to imitate it. Hide and seek alone. It is 1 a.m., and 30-year-old Naoki is at home, absorbed in surfing the internet. His room is dimly lit and his computer screen is the only source of light. In a small apartment, the air is heavy and tangled with every sigh. Naoki had no wife or children and led an ordinary, lonely life. He was born and raised in this city and graduated from university as he did, but he cannot find a job, so he works at a local convenience store. Everything in his daily life is the same, and he is bored with the days that just repeat themselves. One day, Naoki finds a website on the internet about urban legends and ghost stories. He becomes interested in one of them, a ghost story called Hide and Seek Alone. This seance is a dangerous game known to everyone in Japan. Seeking a thrill and excitement that he cannot experience in his everyday life, Naoki decides to try hide and seek alone. He carefully studied the procedure. The moon in the night sky casts a faint light and shadows on the room. The light shines into the room and casts a shadow on an old doll in Naoki's room. The doll had been given to him by his grandmother and had been left in a corner of the room for some time. Naoki's heart pulsed and his heartbeat increased his tension. Naoki did not yet know that this day would change his life into a nightmarish horror. He looks at his watch. Waiting for 3 a.m., the supposed start time, Naoki proceeds with the steps of hide and seek alone. Step 1. First, prepare the doll and remove all the cotton from the doll. Step 2. Put hard rice into the empty doll before cooking. Step 3. Cut your own fingernails, place them in the doll and sew them together with red thread. Hair or blood can be added at this point to make the seance more powerful, but increases the risk. It is said that the rice represents the internal organs and the red thread means blood vessels. This makes it possible to connect with the doll. His hands sweating, he clipped his nails and placed the nail fragments into the doll. His hand shook and he cut his fingertips a little. The drop of blood fell onto the rice in the doll. Step 4. Decide on a place to hide beforehand and place a glass of salt water there. Hide and seek alone is a game of hide and seek with a stuffed animal. Step 5. Name the dolls. Naoki thinks of a name and chooses the name Mio. This name will be the person he plays hide and seek with. He calls Mio in whispers. His voice echoes as he disappears into the heavy room. Step 6. Fill the bucket in the bathroom with water. This is the preliminaries so far. Complete the previous steps so that they can begin at 3 a.m. And the time is 3 a.m. Naoki starts the game. Step 7. He says to the doll, "I'm the first demon" 3 times and dunks it in the bucket in the bathroom. The doll's whole body is immersed in the water and he is anxious and excited to see it. Step 8. Turn off all the lights in the house and leave only the television on. In this state, meditate and count for 10 seconds. There are no TV programs on at 3 a.m., only an inorganic sandstorm on the screen. Step 9. Take a knife or other cutting instrument and move to the bathroom. At this point, if the doll is still there, unchanged, the game can continue. Say his name, stab the doll with the blade while telling him that you have found it and that the ogre actor will take over. He moves to the bathroom. He is relieved to see the doll there unchanged. Naoki then stabs the doll with a knife, saying, "Mio, I found it." The doll is stabbed in the bucket, and a little remaining air leaks out with a small sound. He then told the doll 3 times that Mio is the next demon and hid in a place where he kept salt water. He hid in the wardrobe of his room. The blue-white light of the TV screen dimly illuminated the room. Naoki's heart races and his breathing becomes labored. The season is summer, and summer in Japan is hot and humid, even at night. The secret space in the closet becomes unusually hot. Naoki felt sweat dripping down his cheeks. It is said that one can experience a seance by hiding from here for at least 1 hour. Also, the hide and seek alone must be completed in the correct order within 2 hours. Naoki regrets starting the game because the atmosphere in the room is so stifling that it doesn't feel like his own room. At that moment, he heard something fall from the bathroom. She wanted to stop playing hide and seek right now, but it had only been 15 minutes since the game started. To end it now would be a forbidden act that I must never do. Naoki waited patiently for time to pass under his breath, but then he became aware of footsteps. Looking out through the closet door, he saw something walking down the corridor. Slowly a black shadow is moving down the corridor. It appears to be a person, but it is too dark to see clearly. The black shadow slowly entered his room and stayed in the corner of the room. Naoki felt a gaze that he could not compare to anything else. He is being watched. "Where are you?" A voice echoed in the room that was supposed to be empty. Although he should never answer, Naoki reflexively looked at the gap in the door. "Someone is looking at us." He is almost panicking with fear, but he cannot be found. He meditated hard and waited for time to pass. How much time has passed? After a long, seemingly endless silence, Naoki checked his watch. The time was 4:30 a.m. At least an hour had passed since he had to play hide and seek. Naoki took a mouthful of salt water. The rule of this hide and seek alone is that the spirits cannot see you while you have a mouthful of salt water in your mouth. To end the hide and seek, the salt water in the mouth must be sprayed on the doll in the bathroom and the doll must declare that it has lost the game. With the salt water in its mouth, the closet door is opened. There was a strange man standing upright and staring into the closet. He whispered something in an inaudible voice. "Where are you? Where 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 are you?" His eyes meet those of a strange man. Naoki stiffened and was worried that he was being watched. Naoki loses track of time and stiffens at the sight of the eyes that seem to suck him in. He suddenly remembers that he has to finish within 2 hours. He held back the salt water leaking out of his mouth and headed for the bathroom. When he returned to the bathroom, the doll was not there. Naoki felt cold sweat running down his neck. He began to search the whole house. He suppressed his impatience and moved slowly, trying not to make a sound with his footsteps. Naoki does not know where Mio is. He can only hear his own breathing and the beating of his heart. At last, Naoki finds the doll in the living room. She is sitting on the sofa. The sight takes Naoki's breath away. He wanted to end it here. But he made a mistake in the last step. The time was 5:07 a.m. 2 hours had passed. The moment he looked at the clock, a chill ran down his spine. The air became damp and cold and it became difficult to breathe. Driven by fear, he returns Mio to the bathroom. However, his mind is so confused by fear that he cannot remember the procedure. Naoki thinks frantically, but his impatience gets the better of him. He puts Mio back in the bath bucket and sprays her mouth with salt water. I win. I win. I win. He declared victory to Mio 3 times. However, he felt a twinge of regret for passing the time. An eerie presence continues to haunt the house. He is tormented by a fear he has never felt before. From that day onwards, his house always seemed to have a black shadow. Then, Naoki's fate comes to a dark and unexpected end. It was sudden. After playing hide and seek alone, I couldn't sleep at night at all. Whenever I close my eyes, I hear that voice in my ear. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Sleep-deprived Naoki was on his way home from work at a convenience store when he wandered out into the driveway as if someone was pulling him along. In the dire situation, the stranger in the room stood quietly by his side. Naoki heard the words in his ear at the last moment, surely.
I found.
Come and play with me? Have you ever heard of the famous ghost story Hanako-san in the toilet, which is famous among Japanese children? In this article, I would like to introduce you to the spirit of a girl who is rumored to appear in primary schools in all regions of Japan. This is a story I heard from a relative of mine. It was in the 1980s at a primary school in a country town. It was 5 p.m. and the setting sun was turning the school building red. Amidst the sound of dead leaves, 4 children were outside the closed school gate. There was Takeshi, a wimpy boy, Kenta, who was always calm and collected, Akiko, who was generous, and Yuri, who was timid. The children were all 10 years old and in primary school. It was time for the children to go home, but they gathered together, lying to their families that they were going to study. Why were they gathering? It is to meet Hanako-san, who is rumored to appear in this abandoned school these days. The children's eyes were fixed on the old school, which is no longer in use. Although it was still light, the abandoned school looked very eerie. The main gate was made of old iron, and its warped shape gave it an indescribably frightening appearance. The children gasped as they passed through the gate and opened the door to the school building. The children proceed silently through the school building. The old corridor is made of wood, the floor creaks and their tension grows. The corridor was rotten in places, with large holes in the wood. As the children stepped inside the abandoned school, a dusty air enveloped them. They walked down the dimly lit corridor and gaze into classrooms that would once have been crowded with children. The floor is littered with old textbooks, pencils and blackboard erasers, many years old. The children explore the school building without speaking to each other. Eventually they reach the 3rd floor of the school. The sound of water dripping from somewhere adds to the tension. Is the rumor about Hanako-san in the toilet in this school true? They stopped in front of the door to the girls' toilet while talking about this. At that moment, a sudden gust of wind blew in from the back of the toilet, where the window was supposed to be closed. The door slowly opened and cold air drifted from inside the toilet. It was as if someone was inviting them to come into the toilet. The sight sends a chill down their spines. They looked at each other and then, gathering their courage, stepped into the toilet. Inside the women's toilet was a dingy, cracked mirror and a hand wash basin. There are 5 private rooms in a row against the wall. The 3rd private room from the back is the rumored private room. How to meet Hanako. It is said that you have to knock 3 times on the door of the 3rd private room from the back of the girls' toilet on the 3rd floor of the school and call out to her. The children look at each other and then walk to the 3rd private room from the back. As their fear grows, Takeshi gathers his courage, knocks 3 times on the door of the private room and asks the door, Hanako-san, are you there? He asks the door. They hold their breath and listen carefully. But there is no response. Kenta tries next, but there still seems to be no response. Yuri tries again, but there is still no response. Yuri tries knocking again. Just as her small hand touches the door, they suddenly hear a noise in the bathroom. They look at each other in surprise. Akiko then asked in a small voice, Hanako-san, are you there? Yes. Then a fading voice came back, and at the same time the door slowly opened. Emerging from inside was a girl with black hair in a bob style, wearing a white blouse and a red skirt. Her skin was pale and she felt as if she had no life in her. The children's faces turned pale all at once. They became motionless with fear. Hanako approached the children. Her eyes were cold and staring into the distance, as if she could see into their souls. The children cannot run away or raise their voices. Come and play with me? Hanako stops in front of the children and whispers in a vanishing voice. The children's fear deepens at her words. They were acutely aware that playing in this abandoned school had brought disaster upon them. The children ran away. They run frantically through the dimly lit corridors of the abandoned school. But no matter where they ran, each of them on a different path, no matter where they hid, Hanako's figure appeared before them. Takeshi attempts to leave the school, but for some reason the gate won't open. Eventually Takeshi feels the limits of his strength and loses his breath. He stops. Come and play with me? At that moment Hanako appears in front of him and captures Takeshi. Akiko notices Takeshi's screams and looks out of the school building window. There she sees Takeshi being dragged away by Hanako-san. Come and play with me? A voice is in his ear, and when he turns around, Hanako-san is there. Akiko's screams echo through the school building. The children continue to cry and run away. Yuri then slips and falls. She struggles to get up, but Mr. Hanako appears. Come and play with me? Yuri is also dragged into the afterlife. Kenta continues to run away, shedding tears. But no matter how hard he runs, Hanako-san relentlessly chases after him. With his last ounce of strength, Kenta takes a metal bat from the warehouse. Come and play with me? A voice is heard in Kenta's ear, and as soon as he turns around, he swings the bat as hard as he can. The bat hits Hanako in the head and she lies there bleeding. Come and play with me? I must have hit her with the bat just now, but somehow I can still hear it in my ear. I swing the bat selflessly and she falls backwards, bleeding. Come and play with me? Stop it. Takeshi shouts and swings the bat back. Kenta continued to hit Hanako, who was already lying on the ground, with the bat. Suddenly, Kenta came to his senses. At his feet, Takeshi, Akiko and Yuri were lying in a state of utter disarray.
Come and play with me?
This story was actually posted on the Japanese Internet Forum 2 channel in January 2004. A woman calling herself Hosami posted details of strange experiences that happened around her. We have reconstructed the story from her point of view and hope you enjoy it. Kisaragi Station. January 2004, roughly 20 years ago. A 23-year-old woman called Hosami was working in an office building at Shinhamamatsu Station in Shizuoka, Japan. The time was 22:55. She had just left the office to go home, exhausted from working overtime. The winter night was very cold and seemed to chill her tired body even more. She shrank back and walked quickly to the station she usually used. When she arrived at the platform at Shinhamamatsu Station, she checked the train times with a practiced hand. The last train would arrive at 23:10. It looks like it will be here soon. She sat on the bench and looked up at the sky. There were no stars in sight. The city lights had blotted out the stars. Then the sound of the train arriving rang out. She got up and boarded the train. The car was mostly empty and there were 5 other passengers, but they all seemed to be asleep. She sat down and leaned her head against the window. The scenery outside drifted by in a blur. One by one, the city lights went out and darkness enveloped her. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. The train's internal broadcast voice coming from overhead seemed distant. The train ran for a while and she noticed something unusual. The train usually arrived at its destination station in about 5 minutes, but it showed no sign of stopping at all. It has already been running for about 20 minutes. Feeling curious, Hosami decided to move to the front of the train and ask the station staff. However, the door to the station clerk's office did not open and the windows were closed by blinds, so he could not see anything. Meanwhile, the train just kept on running. It should not always go through the tunnel, but for some reason the train went into the tunnel. Where is this train going? He wondered impatiently, and then the train stopped at a certain station. Hosami looked up and saw the name of the station. The station was called Kisaragi Station. It was an unfamiliar station name she did not recognize. She looked around, but all the passengers on board were asleep. The train was so quiet that it could be described as unmanned. She felt a sense of bewilderment in her heart, but also a touch of fear. The time was 24:25. It had already been more than an hour since she had boarded the train. She took out her mobile phone and searched for Kisaragi Station on the internet, but the station did not even exist on the map. She asked about Kisaragi Station on internet forums, but no one seemed to know anything about it. The station was surrounded by darkness. There were no houses or buildings, just mountains and grasslands. She groped her way through, but could find neither a payphone nor a taxi rank. She looked for the timetable to check for a train to return, but it was nowhere to be found. Fear enveloped her as she realized how unusual the place she was standing in was. She took one deep breath and stared ahead. Ahead of her was the only road, the railway line. Where those tracks would take her, she herself did not know. But she had no other choice. Midnight. The time was 1:10 a.m. Hosami decided to walk along the railway line back to the previous station. 10 minutes after she started walking, her father called her, explained the situation and suggested she contact the police. Hosami asked the police for help, but they misunderstood it as a prank and did not take him up on it. Suddenly, she heard the sound of drums and bells in the distance. The sound instilled a deep fear in her heart. She kept walking, crying, hoping to reach some station. Before she realized it, she had been walking for an hour. The sound of drums and bells she had heard earlier seemed to be getting closer. Behind her, a voice told her that it was dangerous to walk on the tracks. Thinking the station staff were there, she turned to see an uncle with one leg missing standing behind her. But the uncle disappeared. Seeing the phenomenon, Hosami trembled and cried in fear. Her legs were already tired, she could no longer walk and there was a tunnel in front of her. She did not dare to go through the unusually dark tunnel. At the entrance to the tunnel, there was a sign saying Izunuki. She consulted an internet forum where she had posted the events up to this point. It turns out that nobody knows about the tunnel. Standing at the entrance to the tunnel, Hosami took a deep breath. As darkness enveloped her, one voice echoed in her head. "I have to go on." The tunnel was covered on all sides by a cold, black wall. Only the sound of Hosami's footsteps, lighting up her steps, broke the silence. The tracks led through the center of the tunnel to the other side. She cried and kept walking, relying on the meager mobile phone light source. After walking for 15 minutes, Hosami was relieved when she saw the exit of the tunnel. A man appeared to be standing at the exit of the tunnel. The man appeared to be in his 40s and had a thin, gaunt face. He smiled at Hosami and asked, "Are you all right?" he asked. His voice was soft and reassuring to Hosami. The man offered to take her to the train station and offered to give her a lift in his car. There seemed to be accommodation near that station. Hosami accepted the proposal and got into the man's car. However, as the car started to move, Hosami realized that something was wrong. Instead of heading towards the station, the car was going deeper and deeper into the mountains. Hosami asked the man where they were going. The man replied that they were heading for Hina Station. Hosami realized that this was obviously strange. Although the name of the station was familiar, Hina Station was too far from Shin Hamamatsu Station. Moreover, Hosmi knew that there were no accommodation facilities at Hina station. After that, the man stopped answering any questions. The man seemed to be muttering something in a very low voice. Hosmi stopped posting on the internet forum at 3:44 am, saying this is my last post as my mobile phone will run out of charge. Where exactly is the Kisaragi station where she got off? The story became the talk of the town all over Japan and is still passed down as an urban legend.
In 1990, an 8-year-old girl called Miki lived in Nagano, Japan. She had loved dolls since she was a child and had named her favorite doll Mary. Mary is a doll with a lovely skirt. She was a precious doll that her mother bought her for her 4th birthday. One day, because of her father's work, her family had to move to a place a little further away. Of course, she cherished Mary so much that she was supposed to move with it. Miki was packing her belongings in cardboard boxes for the move. She had packed her belongings in a clever way: textbooks, picture books, bags, pillows. She planned to throw away all the clothes she no longer wore in a plastic bag. At that time, Mary was thrown away amongst the rubbish. On the day she finished moving, she soon realized that Mary was missing. Where is Mary? Her mother felt sorry for her, as she was very depressed, and decided to buy her a replacement stuffed animal. A year after the move, she got used to living in a new place and began to love her new stuffed animal. And she had forgotten about the doll called Mary. Then one evening, when she was home alone, she received a phone call. Her parents had not yet returned home, so she answers the phone. Hello. Hello. Who are you? But the phone hangs up. The next day, she received another phone call. It was at a time when she was home alone again. Hello. Hello. Who are you? Today a voice came from the other end of the phone. I'm Mary. I'm at the dump. What? The phone went dead. Mary was the name of a doll she had lost. She remembered Mary. I'm at the dump. She felt uneasy. Shortly afterwards, the phone rang again. It came again. The girl answered the phone, thinking it might be her parents calling. Hello, Mum? I'm Mary. I'm at Tanaka Station. The phone went dead again. Tanaka Station is the nearest station where she lives. The girl was getting more and more worried. Then the phone rang again. The girl had a bad feeling, but she picked up the receiver, thinking it might be her mother calling again. Hello, Mother? Come home quickly. I'm Mary. I'm in front of Tanaka Park. Tanaka Park is a small park close to the girl's house. She realized that the prank caller was approaching. She was terrified. I'm scared. With that in mind, she picked up the receiver to call her mother. The phone rang at the same time and she took the call without thinking. A voice is heard. My name is Mary. I'm in front of your house right now. With that, the phone went dead. The girl couldn't stop shaking with fear. The girl was so terrified that she unplugged the phone and looked outside through the front door. It was completely dark and there was no one outside. Only the street lamps eerily illuminated the road. She checked that the front door was locked. She then left the living room where the telephone was located to lock herself in her room. Suddenly, the phone, which she had supposedly unplugged, rang. Already confused, she was filled with fear and anger. Then she answered the phone. What the hell are you? Enough. Then, I'm Mary. I'm right behind you.